this amazing world we have that lets us do both. Lets our voices go out beyond the walls of this room and back in. This is a flow. I know this flow is spirit. That spirit is ever moving, always growing, always creating new. There is no end to it. Each of us is that creation, that newness. Each of us is the bottomless, endless possibilities in skin suits, only limited by our consciousness. So I know today my consciousness says yes to more. Surprise me, God. Surprise me, Spirit. I welcome it. I allow that newness to flow through and out and as me, as my words, as my heart, as my beliefs. Surprise me. Bring more good. More good comes. What happens when you say fabulous? Fabulous comes. So I call fabulous today for myself, for each of those within the sound of my voice, and what the heck, for the whole world. It can't hurt. In fact, it doesn't. Fabulous comes. I'm grateful for that knowing. Out of the compost, the seeds sprout. What are we planting in this compost? I know it's going to be flowers because I planted flowers. Or zucchini. Better watch that. But that's what happens when we carefully plant in that compost that is Spirit's ear, if you will, what we want to grow. I grow good, overflowing, love overflowing, joy overflowing. And I know that because that's what I set into the law says, yes, ma'am, how high do you want it to grow? Surprise me, God. So let's let that go into the law. Let that go into God's ear and give it to that, and let's be surprised, overjoyed by what shows up. And so it is.
So we've been working, this whole year we're working on a theme of growing deeper, rising higher, allowing ourselves to expand. And this past month we have been working on the theme of life is messy, and I have some good news and bad news for you. Today being the end of the month, this is the last time we'll be talking about life is messy. And for some of you, you'll be saying, oh, thank God. For those of you who weren't here, the first 2 Sundays we had the chairs in disarray, we had pictures crooked, we had the altar was in a mess, we had all sorts of stuff. I think I was wearing mismatched socks one day, and just silly things like that. So the good news is we will no longer be messy in here. The bad news is life will still be messy, because that's just how life is. Yes. We'll just move on and talk about something else, but it will still be messy, because messy is part of the creativity of life. Have you noticed? Oh, good. Thank you. I've been working in the garden for the last, several weeks. It's been, lovely weather to do that with. And so just watching that process, and it's a messy. My fingers get dirty. My fingernails get dirty because I got to, I can't antiseptically just put a plant in the dirt. I have to get my fingers into it. And so it's just like, it's messy, but it's fun. Yes? And so today's talk is called Arrival Isn't the Point. Arrival isn't the point. We all have or have had the idea that when I just get there, everything will be wonderful. When I just get older or younger, when I get my driver's license, when I get out of the house, when I get back into the house, when I get married, when I get divorced, when we have kids, when the kids are gone, when I get this job, this accomplishment, only to find out that when we get there, there's more. There's a whole new horizon, yes? Because there's no there. We arrive at some place and we go, oh, wow, there's more, right? And not only that, it's different and it's more involved than we thought. And so eventually we may begin to realize that there is no finish line. Take a breath. Yet our culture is steeped in the idea of arriving. We want to arrive at enlightenment. I will be completely enlightened and all will be blissful in my life. We want to arrive at ascension. We want to arrive at dying and getting to heaven in the sky. Or better yet, we've simplified that because there's an old blues song that says everybody wants to go to heaven, but nobody wants to die. And so we don't want to die anymore. So now some people want to be raptured. I don't really want to die. I just want to be lifted up there. I'm just, boom, there. We all have this idea that there's this finish line. When we get the right president, breathe. When we get the right leader, when we get the right spouse or partner, when we get the right minister, when as the minister we get the right congregation. Because while you're judging the minister is judging the congregation, right? But life is a flow, it's not a stagnation. Change or evolution is the only constant that there is. And we can either flow with that change, which I highly recommend, we can ride the wave, or we can dig in our heels, we can fight, we can resist, we can go, as we every once in a while sing about, kicking and screaming down the path of transformation, but we're on the path of transformation anyway. So you can either kick and scream, or you can flow with. And if we kick and scream, if we dig in our heels, instead of letting the wave carry us to a higher ground, the wave of transformation, we get caught and battered in the tumult of change. We start crying out, take me back to what I have known. Take me back to my all old small idea of how it should be. I want to go back there. None of you do that, but you know people, right? We're in a period of significant tumult and change right now. Have you noticed? And it's uncomfortable and messy. And by the way, what we're seeing today isn't today. This has been building for decades, centuries, in some cases, millennia to this point. And it's just the evolutionary process happening. And the trick is to not get caught up in it, because we can get caught up in the tumult, the process of how the change is happening, and we can scream and yell and hate and vilify and all that stuff. We can go, I don't like how this change looks. I don't like how this change is happening. You know, I've known people who for decades have been praying for transformation of the world. And it's like, okay, so great, we're in the transformation of the world, and you don't like how it's happening. But, you know, the caterpillar doesn't sit there and go, well, I want to just kind of just gently evolve into a butterfly without not becoming a caterpillar. And it's not possible, right? So if we want to have this transformation, if we want to go further, change is going to happen. We can also step back and anchor more deeply in what we say we believe. And this is the way to move through this change. To what we say we believe that God is all there is. Breathe. All. The people, the process, the nature, the planet, the solar system, the universe. The other day I happened to come across the wonderful NASA photograph that was taken by Voyager 1 back in 1990. It's called the Blue Dot. And it's when it's out at the edge of the solar system, they turn it around to get the cameras to take the picture back of the solar system. And here is this little teeny tiny 1 pixel dot. That's Earth, caught in a ray of sunlight. That's us. And so we're down here sitting there yelling and screaming and fighting, and we got barriers and boundaries and all this stuff. We forget that we're part of this infiniteness and how silly it is. So we believe that God is all there is. And we as religious scientists also say that we believe in freedom from discord of every nature and that it's sure to be attained by... Really? I thought it was just special people. It's sure to be attained by all. And then go deeper into consciousness of holding that outcome. As Buffy said in her prayer earlier, what we plant is what shows up. And so if we're going to plant more chaos will show up. But if we plant the idea that God is all and that we are sure to be free of discord of all kinds, and everyone is that, that's also what we're planting. And then trusting the law to outpicture as that. As the law outpictures our deepest beliefs. We're called to... I shared with you that the morning after the election, I was not real happy with the election. The morning after the election, I heard this little voice that said, before the election, chop wood, carry water. After the election, chop wood, carry water. And so that's what we're doing. That's no matter what is happening out here in any part of our lives. Chop wood, carry water. It's do the spiritual practice. Ernest Holmes says that to desert the truth in the hour of need is to prove that we do not know the truth. If we bail on all the things that we know are true and say, oh, I'm going to ignore all that, we're not really anchored in that. And so this is a wonderful time to anchor and to remember and to ask ourselves, how deeply do I really believe this? By lifting up in consciousness to ride the wave gives us a higher perspective and allows us to co-create the wave with that infinite consciousness, to co-create the divine change, and also to comfort and support and guide those who are caught up in the tumult. Because not everybody is playing at this level, right? And there are people that are hurting. And we can't do that. We can't support them if we're also caught up in the fighting and all the anger and all the stuff. So I invite you to take a breath. Yes, all that's happening, take a breath. So when we stop taking things personally, when we realize that we are part of a collective whole, greater than any one of us or even all of us, we shift out of our self-oriented point of view of how things should be and open up to how things are becoming. Because guess what? They're becoming that anyways without our say-so. This becoming is a constant state that's just going on and going on and going on, whether we like it, whether we approve of it or not. It's what's happening. And movement forward requires release of the old. Isn't that fun? Which our tight little egos don't like and resist. Sometimes to our grave we'll hang on to things. Max Planck, who was a German physicist, worked in quantum physics early in the last century, said that a new scientific truth does not triumph by convincing its opponents and making them see the light. How many arguments have you watched on Facebook, for those of you who play on that, where we're trying to convince the people who disagree with us about how wrong they are and try to set them right? And how many times does it work? Okay? So he says, new scientific truth does not triumph by convincing its opponents and making them see the light, but rather because its opponents eventually die and a new generation grows up that is familiar with it. And that has been paraphrased as science advances one funeral at a time. That might not be limited to science. In the resurrection story of the Hebrew Bible, there is a resurrection story in the Old Testament. Did you know that? It's called the Exodus, where people moved from one consciousness to a new consciousness, but the old generation had to die off. That's why they spent 40 years, which is a generation, wandering in the desert, because so they could all die off. All those people who had the consciousness of slavery and living in Egypt as an ideal had to die off. Even Moses, who led them, had to die off so that they could enter the promised land. So how do we ride the wave of change? By turning to the deepest spiritual truth, which is love. Take a breath, open your heart, maybe put your hand on your heart. Love. And I'll preface this by saying love doesn't mean liking, doesn't mean approving, doesn't mean being a doormat for anything. It doesn't mean throwing out wisdom, discernment, and healthy boundaries. Love means despite all the surface stuff, I choose to recognize you, me, and all as God in form. All of us as one. Mark Nepo, in a little essay that says, "Love like water," said, most things break instead of transform because they resist. Take that in. Most things break instead of transform because they resist. The quiet miracle of love is that without our interference, it, like water, accepts whatever is tossed or dropped or placed into it, embracing it completely. Love is greater than the stuff. The capital L love that I'm talking about is greater than the stuff. When we move into alignment with deep divine love, we move into alignment with the deep divine flow, and we move through change with deep divine wisdom, which is the heart and the mind working together. Knowing what is ours to do, not from reaction to external circumstances or our old beliefs, not responding from anger and self-righteousness, but instead expressing, giving out, sharing out from a deep well of the great subtle power of divine love. Where are we living from? Is it from our deep within, or are we living in reaction to? And like water, this deep divine love eventually smooths everything out and brings life to everything, to wherever it goes. So love is the great impulsion of the universe, the great motivation of the universe. We say God is love, that God is all there is. Then there is only love. But if we aren't tuned into that frequency, and I have sometimes not been tuned into that frequency, if we're not tuned into that frequency, we don't see it, we don't hear it, we don't experience it. And instead, we see, hear, and experience the frequency that we are tuned into, which is usually the stuff that surrounds us. It's one of the reasons to come together in a spiritual community that lifts us up collectively, that says, wait a minute, let me tune to something different than all this other stuff. It's why we do spiritual practice. It's why we do spiritual study. It's why we do things that remind us to lift out of that chatter so that we can express from rather than react to. So spiritual practice, chopping wood, carrying water, is about tuning to the frequency of the divine, seeing it, hearing it, feeling it. We did our morning meditation for the two people who were here on feeling the nature of the divine and then living it. See, it does no good to know about God is all there is and God is love and all that stuff. We must allow it to flow through us. We must allow ourselves to embody it. You know, this past week I was in a deep meditation and working with a teacher and on love. And then about an hour later, I went out driving. And we're going to talk about that next. Not my driving, but we get out into the space of love and all of a sudden other stuff comes up. And where do we come from? We have to embody it. We have to let it flow through us. And so just as Ram Dass said, if you want to know how enlightened you are, go visit your family. So we can look around us at what irritates us to see where we don't really believe and where we are blocking the flow of divine life love, like the traffic around us, or like we watch the news, or whatever, that particular friend. The Dalai Lama talks about he has friends and then he has sacred friends. And the sacred friends are the ones that challenge him. He says, the Chinese government, my sacred friend. So it's the ones who challenge us. Those are our sacred friends. So we get to look at where am I blocking the flow of life? Where is the bloated nothingness, as Emerson calls it, showing up? And I want to read a little bit of Emerson here for a moment from his essay on spiritual laws. He said, the lesson is forcibly taught by the observations that our life might be much easier and simpler than we make it. That the world might be a happier place than it is. That there is no need of struggles, convulsions, and despairs, of the wringing of the hands and the gnashing of the teeth, that we miscreate our own evils. Nature will not have us fret and fume. She does not like our benevolence, which is our doing of good deeds. She does not like our benevolence or our learning much better than she likes our frauds and wars. When we come out of the caucus, or the bank, or the abolition convention, or the temperance meeting, or the transcendental club into the fields and woods, she says to us, so hot, little sir? We are full of mechanical actions. We must needs intermeddle and have things in our own way until the sacrifices and virtues of society are odious. Love should make joy, but our benevolence is unhappy. Are we doing good deeds out of love, true love? Or are we doing them because we're supposed to? And it's the right thing to do. I always love that phrase of walking out of whatever meeting we've been in, kind of still in a state of that, and nature just says, "So hot, little sir." I remember when COVID first hit, I have a green belt behind me, and I went walking through that, and I went looking around and went, the birds don't care. The trees don't care. They're not all living in fear. I could feel the fear palpably in the air. And it's like, but they're not. And so it's letting ourselves remember that there's a world that is not all tied up into what we're tied up and worked up about. As we look at what gets us so hot, it is really our spirit showing us what we need to release, so we can truly move into the promised land, so we can truly live in the resurrected state. And that takes releasing our understanding of ourself as being bound to or by what we have done or what has been done to us. We all have this list of things that we've done to other people or other people have done to us. And we carry it around and we call it our identity. And we bind ourselves to it. But we have to release that. And yes, this is forgiveness, which is opening more fully to the divine, to the infinite love, which has always been here. So in truth, we've always been forgiven. God doesn't hold a grudge. The infinite presence is just love. It's just sloppy love. Jesus talks about this with the prodigal son. The son comes back after feeling really guilty about all the stuff he does to the father, and he's sitting there going, I'm so guilty, and I shouldn't even be your son, but can I just live in the ranch house and like that? And the father doesn't even engage with him at that level of conversation. He just looks at him and says, hey, I'm so glad you're back. Here's a ring, here's some new clothes, and we got a party. What if we all understood that that's how the infinite presence is? There's a party available to us right now. Do you want to go? You're already here. So in truth, we've always been forgiven, but in denying the ever-presence of divine love, we have blocked that expression. And as we align with the infinite oneness, the infinite love, that we truly are, you are that infinite love in form. As we allow our resurrected self, and you all and I all have one, there is that aspect of us. As we allow that to come into expression by removing the boulder at the cave door, that we find out that the self, the capital S self, our high self, forgives how much? How many things? All things. Take a breath. The ego doesn't like to do this. It's okay. Just thank it. But the self, the capital S self, the God self within us, the infinite love within us, forgives all things. For some of us, we're so attached to old wounds, to things that either we have done or things that have been done to us, that we find it so difficult to forgive. And so first, we have to understand that forgiveness does not mean condoning, does not mean allowing, nor does it mean that we can do whatever we want, saying, well, hey, I'm already forgiven, what the heck? I remember as a kid, in Catholic school, saying to the nuns, well, if Jesus already died for our sins, then it doesn't really matter whether I sin or not, because he already covered it 2,000 years ago. They didn't like that question, in the way that nuns express that they don't like that question. So here's the thing, if we harm our neighbor, make it right with our neighbor. And I'm talking about harming our neighbor, not just our neighbor doesn't like, the shade of our hair or something we said. Harming. If we harm our neighbor, make it right with the neighbor. But if we're stuck with something that feels too big and we're too attached to it, we can apply the practice that Jesus demonstrated, saying, Father, forgive them, they know not what they do. I'm not up to it right now. I'm not able to forgive right now. That infinite presence within me, forgive through me. Turning to our higher power and asking for forgiveness to flow through us, recognizing that forgiveness isn't for the other person. It doesn't let them off the hook. It lets who off the hook? It lets me off the hook. To truly forgive is to liberate ourself, to roll away the stone that has held us imprisoned so we can walk free, riding the wave instead of being caught up and bashed on the rocks by the wave. So we can be free of our old consciousness. And as we liberate our capital S self, because all is one, we liberate all. As we grow, as we become more free, we free everyone to some degree or another. Yes? Because there's only one of us. And then we are raised to a new place, a new destination point from which we can travel on some more, because there's no arrival. So this week, 3 spiritual practices. Number 1, notice what makes you so hot, little sir, little madam. Recognize that whatever that is, as a place of learning, a place of exploration. Instead of making yourself wrong for it, don't beat yourself up feeling guilty. No rubber mallets here, no sledgehammers here for yourself. Just notice it and become curious. Practice compassionate curiosity. What belief of mine got triggered here? Am I being called to release this belief? Hint, probably yes. So that's practice number 1. Just notice what makes you so hot and use it for learning. The second one is ask that infinite presence within, what is the higher place to which I'm being called? There's a shift happening. This wave is rising. What am I being called to? This is one of the things we do in visioning. I'm going to be doing a visioning class beginning the latter part of May for 6 weeks. What is the Spirit's highest idea for my life? And so sitting in that question, that's the second practice. The third practice then is simply to allow divine love to flow through you, especially in the areas where you might have been blocking it. Just be willing to say, I'm willing to love here. I'm willing to let love flow through me. Even if I'm not feeling it at the moment, I'm at least willing to step aside and let something else flow through me rather than me just sitting here being ticked off. Are you willing to play with those practices this week? Yes. All right. I'm going to close with a quote from Mark Nepo. He says, beneath the many choices we have to make, love, like water, flows back into the world through us. It is the one great secret available to all. Yet somewhere the misperception has been enshrined that to withhold love will stop hurt, when in truth it is the other way around. Take a breath. We have an affirmation, if you'll say this with me. I open to the lessons of love and I am lifted. One more time. I open to the lessons of love and I am lifted. So it is. Thank you.